Hey guys, today I have a special guest here, Marc, UI developer and also founder of Frontend Masters. Check it out. All right, so hey Marc, it's great to talk to you. I've been spending thanks. I've been spending a lot of time on Frontend Masters, so it's really nice to hear more about the backstory. So can you tell me how you got started with this project that's now evolved into a full-fledged company?
Yeah, so I'm here in Minnesota. I built a lot of, kind of user interface code going back 15 years when my career kind of started, and built a lot of open source projects. And back before GitHub, before Git, all that kind of stuff, just emailing around SVN diffs back in the jQuery days and even before. And so, yeah, I created the jQuery UI date picker and some projects that a lot of people used. And from that, wanted to teach it, right? Wanted to teach the things that I learned. And so natural path is create a blog and, try out a lot of different things. And I thought speaking at conferences and that kind of thing would be the way that I could teach this effectively. And at the time, I just kind of was taken back by, when you teach at a conference, it's more about like getting people excited about the topic and what's new. It's not about the deep learning. And
Right.
so that kind of kicked off this venture of like, how do I like teach these things that I've actually, the developer ecosystem on the things that I'm learning and that kind of thing, and put that into my training and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of the impetus of like, I want to focus on education and deep learning. And conferences weren't the right way to go. And then I tried screencasts, which was, kind of dehumanizing in the sense of like I was just by myself creating this training. And like I said, I wanted to get that feedback loop going. And so that's where I kind of led to, teaching workshops. And with workshops, I could actually see, the people in the room kind of lighting up to the different things I was teaching, all that kind of stuff. And that is really what kind of kicked off Frontend Masters, because teaching 6 workshops and those were sold out and people wanted more of it and they wanted to consume it online. And also I had built up this repertoire with speaking of lots of different instructors in the industry that could frankly teach better than I could, and giving them a platform to have that same experience of teaching in front of people, bouncing back and forth off the different points that they're making, improving their ability to teach, and capturing that through video and delivering it online was the best format that I found for that.
Awesome. So when you started this platform, how did you find like a way? Like, did you have any like resources to like find out, hey, this is how I build a e-learning company for developers?
Yeah, I mean, my thing was teaching, right? I wasn't even really trying to create a company from this. I wasn't even trying to create a product. I was just trying to create a system to get education, to get good education. And even when I created the first Frontend Masters workshop series and invited people to teach, I was like, well, it's going to cost a lot of money to get this set up. And, worst case scenario, I spent it on my own education, right? I did a new experiment, and like, if this goes well, like, cool, I can, form it into something more. And I did have a lot of business experience in the past. I had created businesses. I had an active consulting business that was able to fund this. And so, I mean, it was just piece after piece, putting in, okay, now we got new video camera. We got, we got to put table mics so that we can hear the people asking questions instead of ceiling mics, which sounded like echoey in the early days. Like, each piece, we added the live stream so people can actually participate online while we're giving the workshops. And so then if they're happy, if the people online are happy, then the people watching the video are going to be happy as well, right? Because it's a very one-to-one type of experience of watching it live online versus watching the pre-recorded course after the fact. So adding live streaming up the quality, and each piece of the way was just like stumbling. Like, we released a set of videos for $1,700. That was the original pricing. And people were like, no, I want to pay for this like I pay for other services. I don't even think Netflix was out at the time or whatever, but I guess Pluralsight was the big one of the day, where you paid a monthly or yearly fee and you got access to everything. So I'm like, well, we're not here to innovate on pricing, right? We're here to innovate on the way and making this learning experience more human, right? Bringing in that human element into online training. And that's really like, it was just piece after piece, very evolutionary. Like people are, it's sold out. So people want video. We got to do video. Like the audio quality of the students is bad. Let's put in, mics in front of their faces. Like we're doing everything in person. People want to participate live online. So let's do the live streaming. And then like with the platform, you see the platform itself evolves with the learning paths. People came out of, there's too many courses for me to choose from. Which one is the latest course? Which one should I go through? What order? And so that's where, the customers, more and more customers on the platform kind of like say what they want and what's frustrating them. And really like ultimately like, down to the core of like how I built this business is people hating things and me solving the things that they hated so that they loved it. Right. Mm-hmm. And now people love Frontend Masters, but it was not always the case. Right. It was Bootstrap theme, a couple of Vimeo embeds, $20 a month subscriptions. That was terrible. The video quality was terrible. Audio quality was terrible, but we were trying something new. And, and I was trying to get this whole, more human in-person interaction thing to work for more people.
Right. Yeah. No, I actually, when I started out on Pluralsight, I think I told you when we were on Twitter, I think 3 years ago or something, and the course was even older. So coming back to Frontend Masters is it's really incredible that you still have that always learning mentality, not just applied to development, but like the platform itself, which is really exciting to see. Now we kind of touched on it, but can you tell me some of those initial struggles that you had? You talked about the audio, for instance.
Yeah, man, there was a lot of struggles, right? Because going from a consulting company and trying to, basically work my consulting projects and, kind of launch this training thing on the side. And that transition period between like making something that's making enough revenue that can even support me, much less all the contractors we had involved, all the, the teachers flying out and like putting a royalty model in place so that people can get paid, in proportion to the amount of revenue that we're bringing in. Like each piece of that, like, is a lot of effort, right? And like going from consulting, taking my money and bootstrapping this thing, and getting it to the point where, it can sustain, like I said, now it sustains like a team, and we have like this nice, space in downtown Minneapolis, like overlooking the city and like all this cool stuff. But you're like building it piece by piece, and especially with like a membership model, it takes a really long time to build that member base to the point where it can like supplement or even replace your income, but then it's really stable moving forward. So I think like initially getting those like first 1,000 customers or first 1,000 or 500 even subscribers was like the hardest, because they're like thinking about Frontend Masters as a long-term kind of commitment rather than a one-off course that you purchase on, like Udemy or whatever for 20 bucks. You can do that without thinking, and you might not even use that course, right? But when you're thinking about subscribing to a platform, it's more of a, a long-term commitment. So you really have to show people that you're there for the long haul, and you're, willing to continue to improve the product and listen to feedback. So, I mean, as far as struggles, I remember one time where it was like, if we didn't, like, we sold tickets initially to the events, and had we not sold enough tickets to cover the live stream and cover the event, like, I pretty much would have went bankrupt. Like, it just was at that point. And not only that, but like the PC itself, like, had that gone down, because there's no backup for live stream, like, had that got down, which it did, and we had to start the event, imagine, you have 20 people in the room or 30 people in the room. They all paid, good money. I think it was like $300 a ticket. And then you have 100 people online. They all paid money too. And if you don't do it right, you have to issue refunds and you're probably going to go bankrupt. And this machine is not working, right? And like the nearest hardware store isn't going to open till 10 a.m., and you need to start, like, it's just an event, right? And so like I remember just like completely sweating and like this machine isn't working. And like luckily the person who works with us, currently, Tanner, he had built the machine to hook up the front USB ports, because if you wouldn't have, like if you built a custom computer, you don't always hook the little pieces into the motherboard so that each, the front USBs work, but he did. And those front USBs were what saved us so that we could hook in the audio equipment to like get the capture and get it out to the live stream. But like, had that not worked, like,
you're out of USB ports.
I'd be sitting here.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's crazy. I mean, a lot of things have to go right, but I mean, it's not all luck, but yes. Yeah. I totally understand when you've built your own PC. I did
live events in particular, like they need to go right. And if you're selling, one-off tickets to a live event that doesn't go right, like the best thing to do, you have to refund them, right? But in this case, we luckily didn't have to. And like eventually, we switched to this membership model. So like if for some reason a workshop doesn't go well, which does happen from time to time, we can just not publish that as a course, as a final course. And like we ran the live event that didn't go so well, whatever. Like, it's it's not going to crush the business, and then like we'll often give them feedback so that they can come back again and do better or whatever.
Right. And it's nice to go through some of these courses because you get to hear a little bit more of the Frontend Masters lore, like just little tiny tidbits. Like you talked about the video editor, like, oh, there's something wrong. I think it was in like the debugging JavaScript course or something. So you had to take that from like the ground up. Is that right? And make the video.
I mean, we've had to, it's definitely like, I don't know if it was debugging JavaScript, but I remember there was like, our AWS course, just kind of the first take of it, like just went off the rails. And for some reason, like an API with AWS had changed or something like that. And it was just like, we had to like stop, retool, fix the code and like make it a shorter course, and like fix the curriculum and like run through it. And, it worked out really well and the course worked out really well, but like the first take at it, the first run at it didn't work well. Right. And so that's the nature of like recording these things in a live dynamic environment, is that things can go off the rails, but we have processes in place now. Like if something, isn't going quite well, we can just take a tech check break, like go through the code, like, make sure that the attendees can make sure it's running, all that kind of thing. And that is nice because like in a studio where you're by yourself, you might not know that there's anything broken with the code. You set it up the night before, you're trying to record it, but like having 200 people going through each course live, right, like susses out a lot of issues, like right out of the gate, and then we do have another process of code review after the fact, which then, solidifies it that all of this code is working even further by like, adding documentation to the GitHub repo and like adding annotations that pop up in the videos, all these kinds of things. And like if the instructor like goes on a rant that's not, applicable to the point that, it's just, it breaks continuity, like we'll cut it and that kind of thing. So we have a secondary process after recording it to make the courses even cleaner.
So what do you think, in your opinion, makes this different than a Pluralsight or a Udemy? What made Frontend Masters unique?
Yeah, I think there's several different factors that go into like making a great course. And I think like, I definitely don't want to disrespect other people's hard work, because I think like there's great material on every single platform. And I just want to make that caveat. But like, I think with us, we definitely have a very cohesive approach to like, when you look at the learning paths, like we want to make sure that, looking at the node path, we had an intro that was missing, right? We released intro to Node and it's super popular, helps transition into the rest of the library. So we're really taking a cohesive approach on the material, and any of our big courses, like for instance, React, we do it every 6 months and a cadence. So Hooks is just released. We're recording a course on Hooks in a couple of weeks. Gives us enough time that, the production story is there. People are actually using it in production. There's not a lot of, huge breaking API changes at this point. Right. So we're going to do a training on it. And so I think like from a quality perspective, you can at least trust that everything on there was created intentionally. And it wasn't just, we're not just a platform where people just want to do this topic and that topic and that topic, and they'll just like keep cranking out course after course after course or whatever, just because they think like something is cool. Like it needs a production story, and it needs to be something that developers really need in their day-to-day job, and we'll keep all of that material up to date. So we, as that pie grows, we want to make sure that pie of sort of like that circle of all the things that we cover, we want to make sure that there's a story, that things are linking together and that they're up to date. So like from a content planning perspective, like knowing that your, time is valuable, we want to give you only the most, valuable tools and the things that have a production story, and not waste your time like on the latest hottest thing that, all of a sudden it fizzles out in 2 months from now. Like we led you down the wrong path, right? We don't want to lead people down the wrong path. We want to give people the production story. So when it comes to just the library, that's how we think of that. The actual material itself, I think our goal is to make it more human. We have people in the room who are bouncing off the instructor. Right. We have, they'll ask clarifying questions if something wasn't explained well enough. We definitely want the instructor to have that feedback as it happens. And so, yeah, I mean, if you get deep into the weeds of a 3-hour course that you're recording by yourself, you're not going to have that feedback throughout the entire thing, right? And that our entire course is tested by hundreds of people live, as well as, content reviewed by a professional developer who's reviewing the video after the fact, making sure that all of the code works, making sure that there's no different, like the instructor is going off in a different direction. So like, I think like all of those things kind of equal, each piece of it, makes something that's greater than the sum of its parts, like each piece of it together is the way that we think of like, what makes Frontend Masters different.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, and to speak to that, with the, there's, cause you have this review process and it's done in a live setting and you have those checks and balances. There are great courses on Udemy and Pluralsight. I did take one actually though, and it was done by one person, and one of the modules, they said in JavaScript, everything's a function. I'm like, wait, that's not right. Everything's an object. And so I can totally see like, yeah, it can make a big difference. If it was me just coming like new to that course or something and just having that in my brain, it might not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal,
Yeah, those little errors will definitely be, will catch up to you in a professional environment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
even
great
just how you think about your code, right? Like to have like Kyle Simpson, who's, written this massive book series on intricacies of JavaScript to teach you, like he knows what he's talking about. Like he's read the literal spec, the JavaScript spec, and he teaches from that spec to teach you like how coercion works in JavaScript. He's not going to lead you astray when it comes to the terminology you use or how you think about how the code actually executes. So that's really, really important too. Like that we're not getting people who are like, out of college who get their first, like, hey, you should write a book on this because you wrote a blog post on it. And then they're not speaking from, that level of experience of like actually having, experience on the job and working with other developers and having to communicate with other developers. Like that's where the best education is born. And teaching should be 20 or 30% of the professional's job, right? Like so that they're taking the professional experience and then delivering it. And so that's what we look for in all of our instructors as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So looking back, what would you tell your previous self about starting this company or about starting this project?
Oh man, I have so much.
Yeah. What would you do differently? If you
I would say like, I'm proud of where I'm at, but I'm not proud of the path that I took. Like, you know, like I maintained integrity, but like definitely there was a lot of things that I would change. The biggest thing is, you know, I spent 3 or 4 years or more, I think probably really like creating different products and different companies, you know, like just spending tons of time building something that because I liked the code and it was interesting or an interesting domain, like I built this huge project in the rental industry because I like to build, right? Like I wasn't really consumed and focused on getting stuff in front of people and like getting that feedback going, because that is really like ultimately other people using your stuff is what's going to propel you to create more, right? And getting stuff out there. So I think like the biggest mistake I made in my career in the last, you know, 20 years or 15 years, whatever you want to say, is like, you know, writing too much code that's just for myself and for my own like intellectual pursuit. Some of that was okay, but like, you know, in general, like had I just like shipped that open source project or shipped that product with a credit card form attached, like then I could have gotten feedback on, you know, the way that I'm presenting the product or what people want out of it, right? And like I would say I did that pretty well with Frontend Masters. I actually built the whole thing on WordPress because I hate WordPress. No. I know people who use WordPress are like, hey, why are you knocking it? But like, I personally don't enjoy the development experience around WordPress at the time. I know it's gotten a lot better, but that forced me to focus on the business and focus on, you know, collecting money and collecting feedback from people and using that to propel. And now our whole systems in Hugo and Go APIs and everything's like really well engineered and custom engineered and all that kind of thing. But in the early stages of the business, that's not what you need. You need to get something out the door with the credit card form, start getting feedback of how people want to use it. And, you know, getting them to pay is a great way to get feedback on using it rather than, you know, anybody who's using a free app or a free, you know, web app or whatever, they'll give you feedback to the moon. Like, you know, this, you know, it shouldn't be just a car. It should be also a plane, and it should also be a submarine. And then like, then you should also be able to, you know, go to the bathroom on it. So you need a porta potty, and you start bolting things on, and a bunch of free users, like you're just going to spin into oblivion. And so like, I feel like that is the mistake that I made that could have saved me 5 or 10 years of my career, is just like get stuff out the door, get feedback, get people using it, and then build around that feedback that you've started, you know, feedback loop that you've started.
Yeah. So 5-10 years, guys, you might want to shave that off. So, yeah, I definitely feel the same way too. I mean, I'm definitely earlier in my career, but one of the things that I've done is like, maybe I don't have as many projects on GitHub, but if I'm going to do a project, the best thing is to have it in like a business setting where that's, like you said, that's where I feel like.
Yeah. Either people are paying you money to use it, or, you know, people are using it in open source, right? Like context, they're taking your component and using it in their code. And like the open source thing, I think was a massive propellant in my career. Like to create something like the jQuery UI date picker, which was used, you know, it's still everywhere, even though I wrote it 11 years ago. You know, that like experience of releasing your code, people hating on it, and then writing better code and like solving more people's use cases. Like in the case of open source, I feel like I grew a lot as an engineer, but as a business person, I grew a lot in really like understanding how people want to use the product to get value for themselves, to propel their own, you know, ambitions. Right. And
something you might not even be thinking about, like, oh, the code is so dry, but you know, the end user will be like, but it looks like this, or like it doesn't
or
look
like why would I use it, right? And I built so much code where it's just like shuffle it into the project archive because nobody's ever gonna see it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's like maybe an artisanal developer, like you want to be an artist and you want to write code and you want to like make beautiful like art in your free time, like that's cool. But like when you're talking about adding value to the world, that's what I'm talking about in the sense of like lots of wasted years. Like I could have been adding more value to other people's lives, which then propels the craft forward, my ability to like create things for them and, you know, add a lot more value to a lot more people.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, we already covered a little bit of this, but if you had some advice for aspiring or budding developers, what do you have for them? If you had to give them, you know, a solid piece of advice.
It's the same thing, man. Ship your project, ship your code. And if it's a business, treat it like a business. Put a credit card form in front of it. Like as soon as you can, get your first paid customer, you know, you'll like from your first paid customer, you'll be hooked, right? And you'll want to serve 10 customers, serve 100 customers. But if you're, you know, looking to get better at the craft, get better at code and being a better engineer, then the same advice applies. It just applies to, you know, go speak at conferences, go speak at local user groups, put your code on open source, you know, and put it on GitHub, try to get people to get feedback, or go like contribute to other projects and start, you know, picking out issues and you know, contributing to open source projects. Like that's the best way to, I think, become a better engineer besides, you know, obviously great courses and having great material, but you want to use that into creating stuff that other people use, whether it's in open source or in a business context of getting customers.
Awesome.
Ship faster.
The code. Yeah,
and don't be afraid of like being embarrassed, because you absolutely will be embarrassed no matter what. Even if you spend 2 years and then ship it, you'll still be just as embarrassed as if you would have spent a day and shipped it, and then, you know, another day and ship the next version, and another day and ship the difference is you'll actually have people's, you know, hands on it, and people will be using your thing versus you just being in a closet being like, oh, I should release it someday.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know, I'm afraid of, you know, criticism or whatever.
Awesome. Ship that code. All right. Well, hey, thanks, Mark, a lot for talking with me. Really appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of viewers appreciate it too. If you want to know more about Frontend Masters, you can see my journey here, or later down the road, when this is released, I'll have the Frontend Masters review, which you can see here. All right. Thanks for coming by, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for having me.